clicking?
Yeah, what is that from?
No, it's gone now.
That was in the hole.
I was fucking furious. I was grumpy is not the word.
Is this like 10 seconds behind? What is this?
It's a slight delay.
Okay.
I don't know why. Didn't say that in the brochure when I bought it. So, but yeah. All right, here we go.
Is it fuzzy?
Hold on. All right, I feel like we have good audio. I can hear. I can take most of that stuff out in the back, so we should be good. All right, everybody. Take two, like full take two on this. I've had to start some over. I've never had to do one completely over. Usually I mess up the first 1 minute, and then we're like, oh, that's not very good. But this one is a full redo of 1 hour. You hear that? And you hear that clicking in the back?
You don't know what it's from?
Nope.
That's so weird. Is it me?
It might be you. It might be you. Maybe there's just a lot of electronics going on, but it's gone now. All right, everybody. Technical difficulties. You never know how painful this is until you start to do media en masse. Welcome back to the CrossFit Rife podcast. Nicole Teslas is with us today. Yep. We're gonna forego all the jokes because we played those out the first 2 times we recorded this, and largely.
I just want like the whole podcast to be like.
No, I don't. What is the noise?
What's new on this setup that was not new before?
The GoPro, largely. But largely what we're going to talk about today is... It's still there, and I'm afraid that we're going to be listening to another entire podcast of this humming.
Was it loud in the podcast?
It was really loud, actually. Maybe there's just a lot of feedback. I don't know. Is it still there? I feel like it's gone.
No, it's gone. Does the laptop affect it not being...
I don't know.
On?
Everything's plugged in. No, I mean, no, the laptop's still got power to it. Oh, it's just sleepy.
Well, there's the buzz.
Is it? I don't feel like I have the buzz now.
I would just close the laptop. You don't need it?
No. Okay. Well, I apologize, everybody. This is not the Joe Rogan podcast, and we are really bad at this. So, but yeah, largely what we're going to talk about today is CrossFit Kids. So Nicole is our CrossFit Kids coordinator. We've been running, what I think is it's like the largest CrossFit Kids program that I'm aware of, but it's maturing just like we are as a gym, and it's been really cool to watch because we started with nothing, and I think the next class or the next iteration has like 20 plus kids in it, so of varying ages. So largely what we're going to talk about today is CrossFit Kids and what that looks like, how to train kids effectively, what that looks like for different age groups, and some things that are coming up, some big endeavors at the Virginia Beach Fieldhouse that everybody's super excited about. And but tell those folks who don't know who you are a little bit about yourself.
So, name's Nicole. I've been teaching CrossFit for 7-8 years now. Started out as just an intern out in Blacksburg. I was CrossFit Blacksburg with Amy and Jesse. Was at Virginia Tech.
Keep going. It's the buzzing.
Don't stop. So I was an undergrad at Virginia Tech, got an internship with a CrossFit gym, and from the second I started school all the way till now, graduation, post-grad, all of that, had been involved in CrossFit. So I like to think that I have a unique situation where my fitness professionalism started in a CrossFit gym rather than maybe what might be the typical or what might be the norm.
Yeah, we talked about this a little bit, whatever take that was. This buzzing is going to really annoy me. Is that I think more people are entering the fitness space without a knowledge of the infamous Globo gym. Like, they
Yeah.
actually don't know what that consists of or what it looks like, what it feels like, what that environment is like.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was really cool because, I mean, just me, my biggest takeaway in all the experiences I've had in fitness, I just like to think that CrossFit has made me more open to other opportunities. Not like it's provided opportunities, but I don't go around judging different fitness regimes because of it.
Well, that goes in a cycle. When you first start CrossFit, everything else is dumb. And then eventually you realize that just, people doing fitness is a good thing regardless
Yeah.
of what that looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've come full circle on that whole thing as well. And, I genuinely, when I see somebody running down the street, regardless of what they look like, I'm like genuinely happy for that person. I'm like,
Yeah.
good for you. Like,
Yeah.
whether they're super in shape or whether they're overweight or whatever, I'm like, hey, you're trying.
Yeah.
Like, you could be sitting on the couch eating Cheetos,
Doing nothing.
but you're,
Trying to better your life.
yeah. So I get it, but it's interesting to see people, and we see that a lot in the level 1 environment where people come in and we make jokes about like Globo gym,
Yeah.
and then I think somebody was like, "Hey man, what's this Globo gym that you?" I'm like,
What is this?
Gold's Gym? And they're like, "I don't know what you mean." I'm like, all right, here we are. We've come this far, everybody.
I know, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. So, but you've been coaching here for
Almost
2 years.
Yeah.
Okay. And then we started the first CrossFit Kids program about a little bit more than a year ago. So about
Yeah,
January of 18.
January.
Okay. And then, so talk a little bit about that process.
So I just brought a program to you. I, at Virginia Tech, had worked with kids, had been working with youth strength and conditioning through my other job. I just find enjoyment working with that population. I wouldn't say more so than adults. I think every group has their own thing, but kids definitely are a ton of fun and they really want to learn. So we just sent it out to the members, posted a little bit on our social media, started with, I think, 3 kids, and like you said, now we have 20 plus, and we're looking to head into different endeavors at different facilities, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I think, so for somebody who has no idea what CrossFit Kids is, they're like, what, are they doing snatches and muscle ups? Like, what's happening? Talk a little bit about, and it looks a little bit different depending on age, correct?
Yeah, so CrossFit Kids, like at the fundamental, the goal is to create fitness as fun. We just want them to have a positive relationship with fitness, get introduced to some very basic movements, things that we do. I mean, we like to say we don't do anything different than our CrossFit program. We train functional movements. The difference is we make it game-like and fun, and it isn't high intensity, go as hard and as fast as possible. It's what is going to create a good experience for these kids. So we do all the gymnastics, weightlifting, metabolic conditioning that you would see in a regular CrossFit program. But it's just dialed back based on their age. The expectation of a 5-year-old is not that they are a small adult. The expectation is they're 5 years old. So what can I get out of a 5-year-old?
Yeah, I mean, the class, I didn't, until, I don't remember, whatever it was, like years ago when I went to that course the first time, I didn't realize like how short the preschool class is.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
like, it's like 20 minutes.
Well, it's like Lord of the Flies. It's like,
Yeah, yeah, but in Lord of the Flies, they eat each other. In this, they eat the adults.
Yeah.
Yeah,
fair.
they literally, coach walks out after 20 minutes and they're like, looks like their shirt's on backwards and they look tired.
That was the hardest 20 minutes of my life.
Yeah, but yeah, it's a lot of games because like little kids, and I think it's hard for people to understand. I don't think people understand the significance of removing physical education from school until you see little kids come in here.
They can't jump rope. They can't.
Well, or they just have never had any means of, there's no outlet. We're just like, where it happens all the time when they come in here and they are just ripping and roaring. And the coach is just like, all right, everybody, you have 5 minutes to just do whatever you want. And they literally just run around in circles screaming really, really loud. And they're like, all right, everybody good? Come on in. Let's start the class.
My favorite thing is with the preschoolers, I give them like at some point in the class, I'll be like, you guys get to be as loud as you want right now. You got 1 second. Make the craziest noise, whatever. And they all just look scared for a minute, and they're like, wait, we're allowed to do whatever we want?
Wait, we can be bad?
And then, and then they're always like roaring like a lion or, doing something silly.
But there's teaching in there too.
Yeah.
So I know you guys, there's sometimes you start with a question like, what'd you learn at school today? Or like, what's your favorite bug?
Yeah.
And inevitably some kid has some weird bug that nobody's ever heard of. And you're like, that's a thing? I want to have a lion beetle. I'm like, I don't think that's real, Bobby.
Yeah, I think one of the best things I've been able to do, or just slowly implement, and definitely didn't happen when I first started, is just constant feedback back and forth with me and the kids. Like you said, asking questions. We have little debriefs, or we're like, all right, someone else tell me, what was that we just did? And they're like, oh, a burpee. And I'm like, oh, can you show me again? What's a burpee? And then at the end of class, like, what's one thing you learned today? What's something fun? And, they retain more than you think.
More than the adults sometimes.
Yeah.
Just talking about people who've been here 5 years and don't know what power clean is. Okay, and then so that leads into another thing which I think is really cool about CrossFit Kids is I don't know if you guys do this with the little kids, I don't remember, but I know you do it with the school age kids where you're kind of teaching some teamwork / leadership where you'll have them give instruction to the group. Yeah.
So I think what's really cool, and this again goes back to just long-term development. I mean, we've had this program for a year or over a year. We have kids that have been with us for every single 5-week session for that year. So now it's just this self-fulfilling machine where as new kids come in, they look to those older kids or those, more seasoned kids to teach them things. And it's cool because now we're character building. Those kids get to be special leaders. If we're learning what is the front squat today, Eve is in charge. It's like, Eve, demo a front squat. Okay, she have a good demo? All right, Eve, what's their stance? What's their grip? And it's cool to hear them know these things and say them out loud, but it also keeps everyone else in line.
Yeah, because everybody wants to be the leader. Yeah, they're like, I want to do that later. But I think what is also very cool and extremely rewarding for me to just hear, even though it's very much your program, is a lot of the parents will come back and be like, hey, like, they're doing better in school now because of this.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, my biggest thing, and we've talked about this before, is just, I think we're putting so much on kids in life in general that they don't have the time to just absorb everything and be patient and really reflect on what they're doing. So you go to school for 8 hours a day, then you go to practice, then you have homework, then you go to another practice, then you have piano lessons. It's like a 15-hour day that never stops. And how much are they really just sitting there and just being at rest with themselves? So I think when you have opportunities like that, the little leadership roles, like, they can actually think for themselves. And
I just think it's cool that, like, we've had numerous parents come back with kids that are, traditionally struggled in school, and they're like, man, they're killing it now. They're getting better grades. They're interacting with their friends better. I just think all those things are really cool to see, but it's not shocking to me because that was my life growing up. Like, I was only even remotely a good student because I was playing sports and because I was interacting with other people and being forced to understand what teamwork is, what communication is, like what hard work is, and then what winning and losing is.
Oh yeah, it's all of those things. It's the physical release of doing something physical that makes you more focused and relaxed in your body. Then it's, being comfortable in your own voice and, just having experience. Like, how many times do people say public speaking, it's just, they can't do it because they don't do it?
I can tell you, I basically do public speaking for a living. I know you guys are very tired of hearing me talk all the time.
That's a trap, man.
But
don't ever walk into Fern's office.
Yeah. Well, listen, I'm not asking you guys to come in there. I'd be super happy if you guys just left me alone sometimes. No, but it's practice. Like, I don't think anybody is. There might be a handful of people that are just naturally comfortable in front of a large group. But even if you are comfortable, depending on the magnitude of the group and depending on whatever the topic is you're discussing or what you're doing, it's still nerve-wracking. I love being in front of groups, but if I'm giving a lecture or I'm going to speak in front of a group of people that I've not spoken to before, or maybe covering a topic that, I don't know, could be controversial, like, I still get nervous.
Yeah.
It's nerve-wracking, you know, and it takes practice and learning how to control that anxiety, but a lot of that comes from sport, because doing public speaking is the same as game day.
Yeah.
It's the exact same thing. Like, the nervousness is all the same, the preparation is all the same, and then when you step out on the court or in front of a group, it's the same. I practiced, now I need to perform, I need to do X, Y, and Z in the order that I practiced it in. So I think it's a super valuable skill to teach kids at that age. Is like, hey, like, this is what hard work looks like, and this is what it can yield.
Yeah, and if anything, you know, when you give them those opportunities, it's just an opportunity for a win. Like, you're continuing that cycle of them making an effort, and then you congratulating them, rewarding them on something else. And it doesn't have to be strictly fitness related, and I think that's what keeps them in the program. Like, yeah, the burpees and the snatches and all that are cool, but do I walk away with a good feeling of myself when I leave Nicole's class?
Yeah, and I think one of the things that that I think is cool, and I got this from one of my mentors on CrossFit seminar staff, is that I think if you look at traditional youth sports, a lot of what people are doing, there's a lot of focus on the negative. Well, so-and-so's not good at this, but a lot of what we're trying to ingrain in CrossFit Kids is like, hey, I'm trying to catch you in the act of doing good, and then I'm going to highlight that good. So we're not going, and what I think is super important, and they really harp on this at the CrossFit Kids course, is you're never going to use fitness or physical activity as a punishment. Be like, no, what we're actually going to do. So one of the things we do in the CrossFit Kids course is, if little Bobby's acting up, you know, we're not going to punish little Bobby with like push-ups or something like that. Like, what you would do in that instance is withhold the game from Bobby. Be like, hey, if you're not going to get it together and you're not going to operate with the group correctly, you don't get to participate in the fun part of this. And the crazy part about that is everybody falls in line when that happens. Like, have you had a kid yet that has not responded to that? I mean, peer pressure is a real thing with kids.
Yeah, I mean, even now, with our group being as large as it is, you know, people don't want to be the kid that's just sitting out or just not getting to play or be a part of it. And I think it helps too, is one thing I'll do is in that game situation or that scenario is I just let the kids that are behaving the best or who, you know, showed the most effort, they get to pick the game for the day. And so when we're 10 days in and John hasn't gotten to pick the game, it's like, all right, John, well, how are you going to behave today?
They eventually give in.
Yeah, they figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, again, peer pressure is a real thing, but again, it goes back to rewarding good behavior, not highlighting bad behavior.
Yeah, and
even if you're trying to address bad behavior, like, you're still highlighting it. So a lot of what you do in that scenario is like, I'm actually not going to acknowledge what you're doing. I'm just going to be like, you can't play in the game. If you're going to continue to act like that, you cannot play in the game. And they come around every time.
Yeah.
So while it looks like you're playing a lot of games, can you talk about like some of the stuff that you guys are developing? Like, so you're playing games in order to trick kids into learn skills, basically.
Yeah, so we do preschool is about 3 to 6, and then school age is 7 to 12, and then anything past that is teenage years. But the school age and the preschool are ages where the most development and coordination occur. So you're talking about your ability to manipulate your body in space, like move your own body weight, hop, jump, skip, all that stuff. So when they're playing a game, we can even make it super specific, like, hey, you guys can only move side to side. Hey, you guys can only move on one leg. And they think it's fun, they think it's a game, but really you're practicing those motor skills of, can I support myself on one leg? Can I side shuffle without crisscrossing my feet? Can I, and all of that just leads into those teenage years where now they have great body awareness and they can manipulate an external object safely, effectively, and be that much stronger.
I think this is kind of two different topics, but the first one is the idea of withholding advancement to another skill until it's done perfectly.
Yeah.
Which is a lot of what CrossFit gets a bad rap for, ignorantly, but like for weightlifting, for instance, like there's not a ton of return on the investment of loading a kid who's 7 years old. Yeah,
I think just in general, this is where experience and knowledge comes into play. Kids aren't, like I said, aren't little adults. They are physically, biologically developing differently. And we've talked about it. There may be some benefit to loading a kid. Like, you can find something. But if they're going to get the same benefit of a PVC pipe as they are a 5-pound bar, but the PVC pipe allows them to move better, then why are we not just staying there and then progressing if it's perfect, if it's quality movement? And I think that's the misconception, because we as adults are like, no, 5 more pounds. All right, increase to 90%, increase to this. That's how I get stronger. Well, kids aren't like that. They're learning coordination. They're not having a hormonal response to what you're giving them. Yeah, and I think it's more of there's neurological development is what you're trying to develop. They're not the biological aspect of like increasing growth and that's going to happen when they hit puberty. Yeah. And then they start eating more and like hormones start to take place and all that. But largely what we're trying to teach them at that age is like I need the neuromuscular patterning to be ingrained here so that you move well for a lifetime. Yeah. Not get real heavy moving like trash and then somehow convince everybody that that's how it's supposed to be done just because you may have won the genetic lottery and you're strong, but you move very, very poorly. And it's funny, I think the field of strength and conditioning in our youth athletes has tremendously exploded. I mean, even sports has exploded recently, where it's now like kids playing year-round on these travel leagues. And as it has grown, just like anything else, it's lost some of that expertise and scientific background behind it. I mean, you can go back to books from the 70s of strength and conditioning, and everything will say the same thing. Do not GPP. Yeah, GPP. Like, get these kids just moving their bodies. Most of the Russian models are built off of GPP at a very young age for all of their Olympians. They're broad base in skill, and then as they develop, then they funnel them into a specialty. Yeah. But I think, which is where I was kind of going earlier, is that I think kids are getting way too specific way too soon. And largely I think that's because parents are just uneducated about what actual development looks like, but B, what colleges actually want. So if you look at some of the statistics on like high level Division I athletics, whether it's basketball, baseball, or football, the kids that are getting drafted, both male and female, at those very high levels are almost predominantly multi-sport athletes. Very few of them are just baseball or just basketball. And so a lot of people don't see that. They see the one or two one-offs that, like, he was a great basketball player since he was whatever. And they're like, oh, well, that's what my kids should do. They should play just baseball all year round. And that's when we see Tommy John surgeries happening in 16-year-olds. Oh, it's crazy. I think working in the physical therapy realm, it's crazy to see year after year the same kids come back like it's normal to have re-torn their ACL, or it's normal to go from an ACL tear to now they have a meniscus issue. And it's like, oh, this is just my off season, like I might as well get surgery now. And it's like, how about you just don't play soccer 12 months out of the year? But
Yeah.
I mean, again, and it goes back to...
It was always a saving grace for me growing up is to switch sports. Like by the end of the
Yeah,
season, I
you're
was
like,
I kind of did basketball all the time, but the volume of basketball that I did shifted like when I went into baseball season. Like I was still playing basketball on the side, or if I was doing football, like I was still doing that on the side because I just genuinely loved it. And quite frankly, because my dad's a basketball coach, so I was just there. But the volume shifted dramatically.
Oh, yeah.
And it was... there's a lot of skills that I developed playing those other sports that I would have not had developed had I only played basketball.
Yeah.
You know?
And even, I mean, I see kids all the time too, is even if you don't have like a physical breakdown, imagine investing, 15 years into your kid and you're like, man, my kid is going to Division I soccer, and then senior year, that kid's like, I hate this sport and I am not playing anymore.
I mean, the most unhappy I ever was playing a sport was when I got to college. And, like, that was literally it. Like, that was my job, was to play basketball. And that was the most unhappy I ever was. So, yeah, I mean, you can definitely burn a kid out when they should be the most excited once they're getting into those junior, senior year of high school, and then now can go into the collegiate realm, which is super cutthroat, by the way. I mean, if you're going into college burnout, good luck.
Yeah.
Like, that is not going to work out for you. Because everybody there plays like you're trying to take food out of their mouth. Because you kind of are, quite frankly. Like, they're on scholarship, and you could take their spot.
Yeah.
So, I don't think people understand that. Like, they need to go into that with a fresh attitude and be fresh and be uninjured. Which kind of goes into the other piece, which is, if we're talking about CrossFit specifically, we're trying to develop a program that like helps kids use CrossFit as a lever on their actual sport.
Yeah.
I'm a firm believer that I don't actually think most kids should be doing CrossFit as their sport. Like
No.
I just don't believe that. And I love CrossFit, but I don't think they should be using it as their sport.
No, I think it, again, is a GPP program that just provides them conditioning, strength, body awareness that makes them better players on the field. And yes, we have a lot of character development going on in our program, just like any other team sport. But me and you, we've talked about going onto that team and progressing to any other level is important, if not more important, than just being a CrossFitter.
It's life skills.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a difference between being on a team and living that life versus...
Yeah, I
being in a
mean, we
CrossFit
talked about
class.
this on the first go round on this, that which
Take
is
one.
take one, which was I played high school basketball and then I played college basketball, and I can remember I tell people like 5 is the number. Like, you're gonna remember 5 games. Probably like your first and last in high school. If you get to play college, first and last there, so that's 4. Maybe 1 or 2 other in there, which is probably like your best and worst game, so maybe 6. But depending on how far you go, like, you may not remember the first game. But again, the number's about 5. Outside of that, you're not going to remember any of those things. Like,
Yeah.
you're not going to remember any of those games. Largely what you're going to remember is your interaction with your teammates, the locker room, the bus trips,
Yeah.
the airplane rides, the hotels, all of that stuff, and learning to be a good teammate. Like, I'm best friends with the guys who were the best teammates, not necessarily the guys who were the best player on the team.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I know it's all life experience, just getting out there and doing something. And we talked about it, like it translates right down to being a good teammate in the workforce and being a good teammate in college. And I think we provide a lot of that in CrossFit, but what I would never want to see is someone get focused on CrossFit as a sport and fitness and not have that experience in life as a kid.
Yeah, I would agree. Like, I think you put too much emphasis on any of that and you put emphasis on competing versus training.
Yeah.
And then when you put emphasis on competing versus training, in my mind, what happens is the world kind of ebbs and flows on winning and losing.
Yeah.
When it's just like, hey, winning and losing is just part of the whole process. Like, you should just become adept at dealing with that. But if your whole life is predicated on winning and like only winning, that's when you have kids that have breakdowns at early ages because they lost in the football game or they
and
lost.
you're just set up for failure in life in general. Like, I don't care who you are, your life is not going to be all wins.
No.
Let me tell you about my...
Give you my life story, which is chock full of losses. But again, I think, in my experience, not just in sport, but in the military, in the workplace, the best performers are the ones that deal with losing the best.
Who have the skills to deal with it,
to cope with it. Short-term memory, be like, okay, we lost, moving on. Like, that's one of the best skills you can develop, which I think is actually a huge benefit, like just kind of subtly built into CrossFit, not even on purpose, which is like, you're going to lose.
Yeah.
Like 100%, like whatever it is, like it's going to happen. Like whether you're a dude, whether you're a girl, like you're going to lose, and you're probably going to lose to somebody who you didn't think you were going to lose to because they're just better than you at that thing. And I think that is great because you can start kind of teaching kids that like losing is not the end of the world, and it's not even a bad thing. It's just a thing that we have to navigate in life.
Yeah, it's just a teachable moment. And I think, I don't even know, in CrossFit kids, I don't want to say that you want them to lose at things, but I want them to have that experience. Like we do our program where at the end of the class, if we have a little debrief, it's you have to highlight what other people did well, because I think it makes you think of what could have I done better. If I'm sitting there thinking, man, Eve was doing the most handstand push-ups, what do I need to work on? Or I don't think it's a negative.
Yeah, it's a good for her. Yeah, no, I like it. I mean, I think what I think is talking about what I think what has made you effective as a coach in the CrossFit Kids world, and so people have asked me, because I think people have started to look at the program and notice that it's becoming somewhat successful, and they're like, okay, well, like what makes a good program?
Yeah.
Like, and I don't think it's any different than what makes a good basketball team or a good football team or a good field hockey team. All the teams that I've ever been on that were like the best, the players loved the coach.
Yeah.
Most of the time.
Yeah.
Most of the time.
We talked about this a little bit, CrossFit training for adults. They talk about the good values of a trainer, and one of them is presence and attitude. Where for CrossFit training for adults, they talk about, you want to be all of these pieces, but I think with kids, like presence and attitude has to be number one, because you have to be engaging and you have to hold their attention and you have to be fun. And then from there, you can get into the minutia of higher level coaching and, what am I really teaching these kids? But, I mean, you can't have no personality.
No. That is like, you are literally, with kids, you are dead in the water. And even if you think you're good with kids, like,
they'll let you know.
They'll let you know. Yeah, I mean, it is like the most terrifying thing ever. I was talking about it before where, I mean, I feel at my best if you put me in a class full of 30 adults. Give me the 30 like most rambunctious adults, and I'm like, I'm good. This is my jam. Put me with like 5 toddlers, and I start sweating bullets. I'm like, I don't know, how am I going to keep them engaged for the next? Like, it's like I'm out of jokes that these kids don't even understand.
Yeah.
So the ability to keep them engaged and keep them having fun while teaching them something is I don't think it's for everybody. I think there's certain people that are really good with kids and certain people who are not very good with kids, and I think that's just something that you develop over time. But again, going back to what you said, is like it's usually pretty obvious.
Yeah. Like
the kids, like find the person in the program where the kids are like, I love Coach whoever.
And I'm right or wrong to say, like, you have to really love working with kids to make that experience good for everyone.
You can't fake that.
Yeah, like, whereas with adults, I mean, you can love fitness and maybe not love the people you're working with in the moment. I mean, their experience won't be that great, but they'll still come in and work out, and they'll still, they'll appreciate the knowledge. kids are like, man, this sucks, I'm out.
Yeah, I think with adults, there's a little bit more where like I could give a good presentation,
Yeah.
and adults be like, they could be like, this is great. Generally, like all of our coaches do love coaching adults, but everybody's been in a scenario where like, oh, man, I'm not super pumped about this group, probably.
Yeah.
But you could still make it a good experience for them.
Yeah.
Kids see right through that stuff. Like if you are not fully jazzed about being there, like they immediately be like, this guy is totally not into this, and they will literally eat you alive.
Like, now I'm gonna go hang from the ropes and jump on the boxes.
I'm gonna go break stuff. So I think that's one of the biggest things is finding the right person for that program and making sure that they're fully engaged and fully invested.
Because then the other scenario is, you're not the person to teach that class, but you want to implement the program, and then that program fails. Now you just have positive.
It's just a bad experience for everybody.
Marketing, like no one's going to say anything great about you or the program.
I mean, it's tough, and I think there's a very people that are gonna. It's like preschool teachers. Like when I go to Logan's school, and she's got her little group, the little hodgepodge group in that class. I mean, I look at that teacher, I'm like, you were born to do this.
Yeah.
Because if I could bring 1,000 other human beings in here, and these kids would not love that person, but they love.
Yeah.
And I think it's this. I think it's just the ability to work with kids, the ability to have empathy and patience, and understand that, like, hey, this is an absolute process that I'm going to be a very, very small part in over the course of their life. And I think having the wherewithal to understand that like, hey, we're going to do some fitness. You guys are going to fall down and get up and do all that stuff. But really, I'm trying to teach you some life skills here.
Yeah. It's funny, I was just having this conversation with Lisa P. about her daughter, Tatum. And I was like, man, I love having Tatum in class. I was like, I never have anything bad to say to her. Like, she's not doing anything wrong. I'm like, but she can't stop hugging me. And I was like, and at some point I'm like, Tatum,
She's a hugger.
Stop touching me.
She's a hugger.
But it's just cool. I mean, like, you want that.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely want the kids that want to be there. Just like you, like going back to like playing sport, like you can tell when kids just really dig their coach, because they listen, number one, and then they'll run through a brick wall. If you're like, hey, let's do this, everybody's like, all right, we're in. Let's go.
You told us to do it.
Let's go burn the building down. So I think that's super important. So you have to have that person who's fully engaged in that development and is vested in that. But then it changes a little bit once they get a little bit older. So once you get past that game playing stage, now we can start talking about, like, we're getting into the school age kids, and then we're more specifically getting into teenage kids when we're starting to develop like actual sport specific stuff.
And now
you can dial the training up.
Yeah, and they acknowledge that it's not that it's fun and it's the environment you're bringing to them, it is the knowledge you're giving them, and they can see progressively them getting better, and that's what they want from you. So, we talked about this last time, but Nicole Foley runs our youth weightlifting program, and she's got preteen teenage girls out on the platforms who look to her like, man, what's next, coach? Like, I think that's cool. I want to load the bar. Like, so I think that's a great relationship to have, and that's just how you foster it to begin with. And
so what are some of the goals in the program? Like, are there a couple things you guys are trying to achieve? Like when they walk away after a 5 or 6 week block, we're like, hey, we want to get these things. We want to check these boxes.
So I wouldn't say with our kids you can give them too much, but we make our 5 week block around 2 skills. So I want them to have like 1 barbell skill that we've worked on, and then 1 gymnastics-based skill, and then everything else kind of gets put in there. So we can do throws, wall balls, kettlebells, runs, row, all that. But if they walk away and they have 2 things, the next session, those 2 things are just 1 more piece they have in there that we can just build upon. So I think this last one we did handstands and we did cleans. Handstands and cleans were their 2 movements they learned.
And then are you guys using a barbell or using dumbbells, or what are you using?
Just depends. We've done a lot of dumbbell work this past session. Then we also implement like a new object or a new piece of equipment. 2 sessions ago we got hurdles. That was new
Okay.
for them. Kept their attention. This session we got dumbbells. That was new for them. But again, going back to you talking about progressively, there will be kids who have been there long enough that this might be their second time doing cleans or a front squat. So some kids have the barbell, some kids have the PVC pipe, and then everyone's just working towards like, I want to be the kid
With the barbell.
with the barbell.
And then how do you make the determination on who gets the barbell?
Good reps. I mean, just quality movement. Everyone uses the PVC pipe for a couple weeks, and then I do give them some opportunity where maybe they'll touch a barbell once or twice. But for the most part, I'm like, hey, that was a great effort. We're going to keep working on this PVC pipe next session. We'll
Okay.
get a barbell. But you want to give them a little, but not.
You got to give the carrot.
Yeah, you got to give a little. And plus they like it. Now they're even more invested because like, oh man, that was cool. 5-pound barbell.
Yeah. And then what is a typical, we'll give both versions. So like what does a typical class look like? If you're going to kind of give somebody the real quick lesson plan, what does that look like?
So kids walk in. If I could give anyone any advice, this is what I would say, is I have started putting a talking warm-up on the board where...
What do you mean?
It's like first thing on the board is like 6-minute AMRAP, 5 cartwheels, 5 box jumps, 10 air squats. And what I tell them is when you walk into class, it's not a free-for-all. Your warm-up is you get to talk with a buddy, but you need to go through this AMRAP circle. So they're literally just jumping on the box, talking, getting reintroduced to their friends, asking them what their day was doing. But they're moving and they're doing something. Whereas before, when I first started, it was like, hey guys, you have 3 minutes to act wild. And I'm like, things are broken now. Dodgeballs are going everywhere. I'm like, the weightlifters are mad because
I didn't
kids
say
are
you could hit each
screaming.
other.
So it's actually been really effective. So that'll be their talking warm-up, but then we'll actually go through a specific warm-up of, hey, all right, let's do line drills. Let's, focus, get back together. Then we go to the whiteboard. I have each kid read a skill. We'll have 2 skills, a workout, and a game. So each kid will read one of the skills, read the skill. Someone will read the workout. Someone will read the game. We'll break apart. We'll go over the skill.
What kind of games are you guys playing?
They're like obsessed with sharks and minnows. I could make 25 variations of sharks and minnows, but as long as you call it sharks and minnows, like they love
Like
it.
we're going to play Duck, Duck, Goose, but you just renamed it Sharks and Minnows. They would
pretty
play.
much. But now, like, that they've been doing it long enough, we can change it up. Like, we've done sharks and minnows with objects. Like, they have to collect all the balls and get back to their other side. We've done sharks and minnows where the floor is lava and they have to jump from object to object or swing or... Yeah, they love sharks and minnows. They love dodgeball only when we bring the adults into it. So if I go out to the weightlifting platforms, I'm like, hey, does anyone want to
Throw balls at kids.
like peg a kid with a ball? Like the kids are like, yes.
They're like, is there risk of injury? Let me do this. Okay, cool. And then, so I want to talk a little bit about the field house. So we're going in there in March. This podcast is going to go on YouTube in mid-February. And we're going to start with kids primarily on Saturdays, correct?
Yep.
And then give me the specifics on that.
So super excited. We're just starting Saturdays in March. It's 8:30 to 9 is preschool. Then 9 to 10 is school age, 7 to 12-year-olds. And then 10 to 11 is preteen teenagers, 13 to 17. So we're really hoping by separating those ages that we can, one, get a lot of kids in there and get them invested in the program and provide opportunity for them, but definitely start building that teenage population because I think that would be awesome.
I know, I'm super pumped about this, and I've talked to Phil about it, and I know he is too. Like, so we both played college athletics. I played basketball. He played baseball, but he's been weightlifting for 10 years. I've been coaching CrossFit for 10 years, and I think we're just both kind of at a point where we're like really excited to go back in, take the knowledge that we've been garnering for the past 10 years, training thousands of athletes, and then taking that and then bringing it back to like youth athletics to teach them how to move well, because I see a lot of stuff in high school weight rooms that is not super great.
Yeah.
And then, for us to go back and say, hey, listen, not only is this the most effective way to train, but here's some things that you need to do to get to the level that you want to get to, because we've done that already.
Yeah.
And then to pair that with injury prevention. Like, can we create better movement patterns to bring injuries down so that one kid who does have a shot to make it to the next level doesn't tear an ACL his junior year because, he's got runs with valgus knees, and we're just like, well, we should probably fix that,
I feel actually really fortunate, not just for you guys, but my boss, Aaron, at the other place, all of our stuff is sport-specific, youth strength and conditioning, and he worked for Penn State. So he brings that aspect, and we have conversations like that all the time of, what is the most effective means of training kids? And I think where strength and conditioning has like progressive programs, CrossFit is really good at just teaching.
Agreed.
And people forget that, or they don't know that unless they've been in that environment. Like, the level of instruction is amazing. So when you combine those two, like you with Phil and, me going in there, it's a purposeful program with, like, reasoning behind why we say things that we say. And
yes. Yeah, because I think
it's effective teaching.
Effective teaching, the ability to communicate what I need, what I would like to have happen, combined with the fact that, like, you have people that have experience developing training programs that are not something that's a one-off that they ripped off from somewhere else. They're like, no, I understand why this training is designed this way. It's designed very specifically, and it's been tested. Like, we've run it through the ringer so many times that we know this should happen here and this should happen here, and this is what they're going to feel like now, and then we're going to switch gears and we're going to change it, and we're going to work plyos versus doing strength stuff here.
So now I have that knowledge, but I'm effectively communicating it because of my CrossFit experience, and I don't know.
And the goal with what we're doing over there is not CrossFit. Right, so at the field house, our goal is 100% to develop athletes in whatever their sport is. Like, we're not training people with basketballs and footballs.
Yeah.
The idea is to take strength and conditioning programs, provide them to the teams and those athletes so that they're better on the field. Yeah. Because this is another thing that I don't think a lot of people understand, and you probably, if you haven't spent any time in like a college locker room or professional locker room, there's a difference between somebody who's really good in the weight room and somebody who's good on the field.
Oh, yeah.
And there can be a total misrepresentation of the effectiveness of a training program because a kid got really strong and looks really good in the weight room, and then they just get handled on the field. So our job is to make sure that the program is actually making better players, not just making them stronger. Because if you're crazy strong but you get pushed around on the line, or you can't check somebody on the field, then that strength is completely useless. Like, it literally has no yield whatsoever. So I think having strength and conditioning coaches that understand what it is to be an athlete and what makes an effective athlete is super important.
Yeah, like, what is my program really helping me on the field? Doug and I just had this conversation where it was like, we saw someone who was buying all these tools for testing, like, pre-data, like Vertec and, like, broad jumping mats and, like, whatever it is. And it's like, those are great tools, but how are you using that to translate to the field? And if you're just getting super great at jumping, but I can't jump and spike my volleyball, like,
who cares?
Like, it doesn't
matter. It literally doesn't matter. And I can't tell you the number of guys who would do some eye-popping things in the weight room,
and then just get
put them on the field, and you're like, wait a second, I just watched you power clean 305 pounds, like, casually.
Yeah.
I don't understand why you can't push that guy around.
Yeah.
That's what I think is super important. Is people just lose sight of that, is because people get married to their program, not what's good for the athlete. Like, is this making a better volleyball player? Is this making a better soccer player? Is this making a better football player? Like, are we actually propelling them towards the next goal,
Yeah.
or are we just patting ourselves on the back because we wrote a really nice looking program?
Yeah.
And I think that's super important. But I think that only comes with experience. Like if you've been an athlete, like you get it. Like the weight room is an enabling tool. It's not the purpose.
No.
You know. All right, cool. Well, I think we're going to wrap this up here. But ask this to everybody. Well, you kind of have a cheat. You kind of know this already.
I have an addition to this, and I'm mad at you.
Man. All right. The
Read
first
it.
thing is, I don't know if you, what book you said you read. What book are you reading?
Well, I've been reading a lot of like plyos and speed drill books, but I would say like if you're looking for something to read, anything by Tudor Bompa, like that's basic strength and conditioning for
I want to
youth
go back
athletes.
and reread Starting Strength.
Yeah. I just got what was it Bompa? What did I get? I got a bunch of Mike Boyle stuff, which I had read before.
He's got some really good stuff.
But it's nice to just go back. And I was talking about this with one of the other strength coaches, is that, he talks a lot about progressions, but he also talks about regressions. And I think that's where some books miss it. Where, like, they just talk about what's the next progression. And it's like, well, if my person isn't even here.
Maybe we should take a step back.
Yeah,
Start
so it's
over.
pretty cool. Anyway.
Okay, and then you said you're listening to a lot of pregnancy podcasts because you're pregnant. Okay. What were you listening to before you got pregnant?
Like some Chris Kresser, Dr. Ruscio.
Okay.
I go through phases. Like I'll be like, oh, this month I'm on nutrition. This month I'm on kids. I do have a bone to pick with like a lot of podcasts where I get really frustrated that they're an hour long and you don't take anything away from it. So I would hope that people listen to our podcast and actually take something away from it.
Well, I mean, I know they took a lot away from what I said. I don't know about you, but no. That,
Versus just like, chit-chatting with the person that you're interviewing. You know what I mean? Like,
yes. Yeah, well, there's a place for those podcasts, and if there's some people who want that, and there's some people who like want a takeaway. If I don't, for me, like it's a mix of both. It depends on the podcast. Like sometimes I'm going to get a mixed bag of like, am I going to learn something if I listen to Joe Rogan? Sometimes I just want to listen to him banter with somebody who I think is funny.
Oh my gosh.
But if I listen to other ones, I'm listening to it for a very specific reason, and if they don't get to the point, like I get a little grumpy because I'm like, you're hiding something in here. You had an hour-long podcast.
How long do I have to listen to this
I'm
to
like,
find
God, I have to search this whole thing to find like the one nugget in here that I'm looking for. Okay, cool. You get to ask me anything you want.
Well, I want to ask you the question I asked you before, because when you answer, I'm going to be mad at you.
Okay. I'm
Which was-
confused, but whatever. Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter, Nicole.
Yeah.
I asked you, what was the best seminar experience you had with someone who didn't CrossFit before? Because that always happens. Like, there's always that guy or a couple people.
But wait, why were you going to be mad at me? I'll
just
retell
wait.
the story.
Oh, retell the story.
All right, so the story that I told was, this is not like the most inspirational story by any means, but it's a cool story. So I did one, it had to have been maybe 3 years ago, but there were, pretty regularly, we have people that come into the CrossFit Level 1 course that have literally never done CrossFit. Like, because we asked the question, who's got 5 years of experience? Who's got 2 years? Who's got 6 months? Who's never done it before? And they're like, oh, there's always like one person in the back who's like, me. And this dude, I'm pretty sure his name was Pat. Like super upfront. He's just like, yeah, never done this before. Just thought it'd be cool to just show up here and do this. And we're like, okay. There was another person who happened to be in that course. His name is Ben Smith, and he had just, I think he was like fresh off, maybe like a couple months off of winning the CrossFit Games, and so a couple people were like kind of telling Pat who Ben was, and like, dude, this dude won the games, and Pat just no concept of what the games is, doesn't care, and and he's just like, oh, it's cool, you won a game? I was like, this is like a big deal. He's like, good for you, man.
What was the game?
Yeah, I'm glad you won the game. And everybody's like, what? I don't think you understand the gravity of what we're talking about.
This is LeBron.
Yeah, this is the LeBron of CrossFit, bro. So there was a lot of people in the course, and we decided to pair them up. And Ben's a good dude, so he was a good sport about it. And so we paired Ben and Pat up for this workout, and so this is Pat's first workout, and he gets to unknowingly do this workout with basically the fittest man on earth at this point.
Yeah.
And it was funny because like halfway through the workout, Ben kind of looks up and he's like, is this really his first ever workout? And we're like, yeah. And he's like, this is amazing, So it was just
Yeah, I'm
cool.
sure he's a good guy.
But that's the CrossFit community though, because it's like somebody who can be at the very peak of the sport, which is like the 1,000th of 1%. And then they can literally train with somebody who's first day.
Yeah.
Which I think is always really cool about CrossFit. Like, it doesn't matter what your background is or where you come from. So that was cool.
Yeah, so the first time we did this podcast, I walked away with a great feeling. Like, that's probably one of the best days I think I've had in here in a while. Where I was just
podcast?
Like, yeah, just like happy to be here. Like, me and you got to chat for an hour. Like, it was good. Haven't seen Doug in 3 days. He's been, at the station. I get home and I'm like so excited to tell him like everything that went on the podcast, like talk about my day. Doug's playing this like stupid golf game on his phone, reclined back in the couch. And I'm like, hey, like this is the story that Fern told. And I thought it was so cool. And I started to tell it. I was like, yeah, Fern, it was a couple years ago. Fern was teaching a seminar at Takeover. There was this guy. It was his first day. Ben Smith was there. And Doug's like, oh, yeah, the guy and Ben Smith, did they get set up together? He's like, I was there. And then he just went on playing his game. And I was like, no!
Doug was in the course?
Doug was in the course.
Oh, that's great.
Which is even funnier.
I probably never saw him because he's so short.
Yeah.
He just probably like hid in
he
the
was
crowd.
like, down.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Like, he didn't even have any. My day was so great, and he had no reaction. He was like, yep, cool. Ben and him, yeah.
That's fantastic.
They worked out together.
Yeah, I'm totally okay with you being mad at me for that. Like, I don't care. That's great. Welcome to the rest of your life, Nicole. Yeah. That is how it's going to work.
So disappointing.
All right, cool. We're going to wrap it up. If you guys have questions about any of the kids programs that we're running, whether they're the programs we're running in-house here at CrossFit Rife or whether they're the programs we're going to be running at the Virginia Beach Fieldhouse, just hit us up. So you can hit us up, CrossFitRife.com on the website. You can hit us up, CrossFit Rife on Facebook and Instagram. If you want to reach out to Nicole specifically, it's just Nicole at CrossFitRife.com or Jason at CrossFitRife.com. We will give you the deets on those programs when the next one's kicking off, and then if you're trying to get in and work with teams, let us know, because we are super stoked to start training some athletes and getting kids in there. So until next time, everybody, thanks for watching. See ya.